Hi. Hello.
Greg?
Hi, hello, everybody. I am Greg McVeary, and we are virtually connecting today from TESS 18, the technology-enabled seminar and showcase, which is sponsored by eCampus Ontario. And I am absolutely excited to facilitate this session because we talk to our students. And when we're talking about empowering learning and enabling using technology to enable learning, we often think the most important voices, and so that's the students. So I don't want to talk too long, and I want to hand it off to them. So if we can go down the line and just give an introduction, that would be awesome.
Hey, my name is Tomelo, and I've been with SXD Labs now working on the co-creation project, which is co-creating VR content together. So this basically means involving faculty and students to create VR content together.
Oh, thank you.
And my name is Elham. I am working with the SXD Lab on the mental health project, and what that encompasses is essentially how can we better support students seeking mental health treatment at their post-secondary institutions.
Hi, my name is Karen. I had the pleasure of working with SXD Lab last year on the Free to Learning project, and that aimed to improve accessibility for students and their learning experiences. So not just, creating new experiences for students, but ensuring that they can access them. And we left off creating sort of a peer learning platform for students to connect and discover different subjects and just find role models that they can relate to.
Hi, my name is Macy, and I'm working with a team at SXD Lab on the My Meaningful Life project, and we're looking at how we might be able to empower students to have ownership of the future so that they can create meaningful futures for themselves through the world around them. And it's basically looking at how to develop a personal foresight tool so that students can have better grasp of and to better imagine futures for themselves and their role in those future worlds.
Well, I thank you, all of you. And I want to dive deeper into each of these projects. And for the panelists, please feel free to either type a question in the group chat that you would want me to ask, or feel free to jump in and ask without permission. So we just, need to find our voices where we can. I do ask that you mute your screen if you are not asking the particular question, just so the camera stays focused on the speakers and doesn't move to you when you start to type. Okay, but I'm noticing, so we have a VR content project, a mental health project, the Freedom Learning Project, My Meaningful Life, and then the tool for the student, for the foresight tools. All of these projects seem focused on other learners, not on your goals. Was that by design, or are other learners your goal?
Yeah, in the VR project, I am the learner. So when we say we're co-creating content, it's me as a student with another instructor, and we are trying to build something together. So it's kind of, my goal as well as a student, we could say.
I think also just in being involved in this design process itself and working with other students, I definitely am learning a lot. Definitely am a learner as well as a designer. And I think with any design process, you have to learn in order to develop a useful useful tool and experience that would actually be valuable to other students.
That's awesome. Anyone else?
When it comes to accessibility, I think that it helps everyone. And definitely working on this project was a learning experience for me, even just engaging with my team members. Everyone's involved.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, whereas I had maybe like a minimal understanding of how exactly mental health resources look like at universities. So this was honestly for me more of a curiosity thing, where I wanted to know what the resources would look like and how do you even access them and how do you learn about what's available. And through learning that, I learned that not many people know about things like this. And so I wanted to contribute to something that would facilitate that. So
awesome. So how did you guys go back, like choosing your project? Like what is the process saying? Like, because whenever I've tried to tear apart the rubrics or syllabi in my class and to say, oh, you're going to develop your own class as we go. And a lot of people like handrails. How did you guys come about choosing a project?
For me, it was kind of a unique case, actually. So my project is actually in the second design cycle right now, and I was actually a participant in one of the research sessions last year. And I was really drawn, actually personal foresight it's just a personal interest of mine too. And I was drawn to the topic, and after participating in that workshop, I was further drawn to it. And when they were doing a call for students later on, I just took it as a really great opportunity to apply and be involved further on. So it is a personal passion for me. I don't know about the rest of you.
Well, I want to stop before that, just because I wanted for our audience. What did you mean by the testing and then the second design cycle? What do you mean by you're in the second cycle?
So there was a previous cohort that worked on this project, and they began with a very general question of how can students create a more meaningful, potentially like career path. It was very general, and they honed in on potentially looking at foresight frameworks into like a personal case, and that was what the insights that they came up to in the first design cycle. So another group worked on it previously.
Is anybody else in the second? Is anybody in the first? Like this was the brand new project?
It was first for me.
First, you're in the first cycle?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now, how many do projects go? Do the cycles ever end, or does the cohorts keep picking up the same project?
It depends on the project, yeah.
And the progress.
Yeah.
So come April, there's generally a showcase of the progress, the outcomes of the specific cohort. So when it first started last September, we had a showcase in April and got a lot of feedback from everybody involved in education, and whatever picked up steam then led into a second stage of development, and we also started new projects in the lab too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Anybody else have any insights about how they chose their project?
Just to clarify, you mean choose your project as in like which project we wanted?
What cohort did you, what did you like? Yes, exactly. How did you end up in your area?
For me, there were a lot of kind of prompt blurb questions that we could think about, and I chose free to learning because I felt like it was the most open. My brain was firing, and I was thinking all these things, and to imagine potentially creating something that could really help a lot of underrepresented students was what really motivated me.
Oh, that's actually an awesome idea, thinking about it that way. So this is very kind of a new kind of learning pathway. And I hear so much you guys are talking about design cycles and testing and focus groups. This is how real work gets done in the real world. What have you learned about the design process that you don't think you get in traditional learning pathways, or that your other students who might, I'm just in the pre-bio major, or, a traditional classroom experience? What is it about the student experience design lab that's different?
Personally, for myself, something that I learned just, I think from the first 2 months working, or even the first month working on the project, is that design is so iterative and it's non-linear. And not just design itself, but a workflow in itself. Because in schools or in institutions, we're taught, follow these steps and you will get the right result. But when you sit down and you're actually designing a process or going through a workflow, you find out that no, it's not that way. I have to keep going back. I have to keep refining.
There's no bold words in the textbook of real life.
Yeah.
I love the way that you put that. That basically, like, you're just trained in the difference between finding the right answer and finding the answer.
Yeah.
That's, I think, a great way to put it.
And also on that line is also finding the right question. I think big part of what I've learned about the design process is the framing of the problem itself. It's probably the most important part.
I think with like a traditional learning pathway or environment, like I previously studied at U of T, I think a lot of students crave is how do you apply the learning that we're getting in the classroom to real life and make it meaningful? And I think what's great about design is that when I was at OCAD, everything was always approached as a problem. So we always knew that it was applied. We're trying to do something or improve something. It doesn't have to be a problem. And what was great about the SXD lab was now it wasn't just school, but we had the resources to try to make things happen. And we were working with different partners, and it wasn't just in the classroom, seemingly blue skies.
And also, I think that having the chance or putting importance in actually going out there and talking to people that you're hoping to design for and having that interaction is so important.
So then, do we need to design learning or design in order to learn? I mean, I know that's kind of tricky, but I'm trying to get that, like, are you guys designing your own learning or learning through design?
Why not both? Yeah.
So what do you mean by both? Expand on that a little bit. What kind of learning is happening for you folks?
Well, I will talk about the project we're working on. There are a lot of products out there that talk about making VR content, right? And when most people look at it, they focus more on how great it is and not actually how it's actually made. So in our project, we're like trying to come up with a way like a scheme or a flow where we can get professors and students to learn to create VR content together. So we're creating a way that people can learn. And through that way of people learning how to make VR, they will learn other skills as well in it. So we have two kinds of learning taking place at the same time.
That's it. And not to get too technical, so I won't get in the weeds, but you guys using the A-frame, or what are you using for your VR environments?
Okay, and that's a specific thing of once now you've selected how you want to make your VR. And that's something that we teach people to make that decision. How are you going to implement your VR? Right? For somebody who knows nothing, who's at zero, that's a question they wouldn't be able to understand. And we intend on teaching them that.
I think, you know what? Thank you for turning it around. That was perfect. And that way we're not prescriptive for our learning. It's not, there's multiple ways to make VR environments, and you're teaching them all of them. And it's like driving that question. I think that's what goes back to that original one. Like, is it your goal, the community goal, or are those exactly the same? Thanks for like bringing that right back in. How about panelists? Are there any questions that we have from anybody in the panel that's joining us digitally? Any of our virtual buddies or anyone asking questions?
I have a question. It's Rosemary. I was wondering if you could think in terms of the projects you're working on. Do you see them being able to lead into something tangible in the way of a service based on what you've learned about the various things you've been studying? And how could you make them accessible and available to other students or faculty if it's relevant in the future so that people could get value from what you've done?
When I look at the project that I'm working on, if we look at the hype cycle, I would think that it's probably past its inflation phase. So we're now at a point where now we're trying to gather information and meaningful data so it can progress kind of uniformly. So at this point, I personally feel that this is something that once it is done, it's made, we have a process or a scheme, it can be piloted in schools. because we've seen this being implemented in different places, but they're so specific. And I believe that if other institutions would have some kind of procedure or a rule book as to how it can be done, I believe many places would be interested in implementing it, because it is something that will really impact the learning experience for students.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking in terms of our mental health project, because we are also in the first iteration, it's too early to say whether or not it would be something that's tangible or not. But I do think that through our research and finding that despite the fact that every school and even faculties have different approaches on how they approach mental health wellness within students, it would have to be something that is broad enough and general enough that it could be implemented in different institutions and environments, but also accessible enough that it wouldn't just work at one school, because there's like over 20 or 30, I don't even know the number of institutions in the province. So it can go both ways, I think.
And I think about, I'm going back to your mental health project, because we've seen so much of the research out there right now that how important social media is for also improving mental health as a resource, especially for young women. Yet at the same time, research coming out that a great indicator of college loneliness is spending more than 30 minutes a day on social media. That, just taking social media off your phone and is basically, and those college students who spend less than 30 minutes actually on social media report less loneliness. So it's like, how do we build in these networks, these human networks that are both digital and for you face-to-face? Like you're talking about on-the-ground mental health resources too. So how do we create those both physical and kind of virtual networks at the same time? Or a difference between that. And that could be for any of your projects.
I think that the most important thing is that it has very clear guidelines on what exactly the product would be. And then once you get there, I think it would be easy to decide whether or not it would be something that's implemented as a service or it would be like a tangible product. So yeah, I mean, it goes, there's a lot to be said about the topic. So it can go in a million and one different directions.
And then I'm also thinking about your projects is, do you feel that they should be measured, and how are you measured? How are you measuring your learning gains? If you think they need to be measured, there's no test that we can give you that says, oh, you built this thing. So how would we measure learning in these environments? Should we measure learning in something like the student experience design?
That's a very interesting statement and question right there, because what I think is very important every time we work on a project or work on anything basically is generally it is instructive, but then there's the other part, which is let's look at the evaluative aspect of it. Everything that we do has to be able to be evaluated or put on some form of scale. That's how we measure success. And the student experience, personally, a metric that I use for myself to see the success I'm having is, has any of the ways I saw the world before changed? And that right there will tell me if there's something good going on. Because if I still see the same world the same way, that means, well, no learning has taken place. Okay? That's how I look at it.
That's a great lens. Like it's very binary in a way. It's like your project it's not that it's multiple design cycles, so it's like you either met your targeted goal of the design cycle or you didn't. But there's so much learning.
Exactly.
If you don't make it. There's so much learning that does. Sure, and I think we have a question from Christine.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I was wondering if you could talk about what the best part of the SXD experience has been for you, and how it's shaping your future learning goals and or your career paths.
I think the best of the SXD for me is talking to industry partners, and that's not something that I cool, and it definitely takes time in me to face the barriers of different opinions and trying to navigate and problem solve while still meeting different stakeholders' needs?
Personally, myself, I think that the SXD experience has been very eye-opening. I'm an engineer by profession, so I know a lot about technical stuff. I'm not very good with design, but ever since I began, I did a lot of research in how to catch up to design, and not just design, but actually, what is it that I want to achieve, and how does me achieving this affect my life? And today in the talk that we had actually with everybody, I did mention that as an engineer, I would like to take a different path. I would probably like to see myself as an engineer that is more involved in, instead of making tools for commerce, but probably make tools for education or something that is around that area.
For me, so I recently went back to school to do a Master of Design, and so this is a great stepping stone. And also, I feel like it's a pet project for me because it is a personal, invested interest in this area, and I just happen to be lucky that this is the project that hits at home for me. So I think it's a mix of having the chance to apply practically the skills that I've learned, working with different people, learning about those kind of relationships, and then as well being able to work on something that I feel so strongly about.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to me. I'm studying art and art history and English, so there's a lot of things going on there, but I did study a bit of design in my studio classes, and this for me kind of fills in the spaces that I personally felt in some of my classroom education. And so the fact that this is even an opportunity, but also being able to apply some of the learning that I've learned, but also learning new things, because a lot of this has been guided. And I did just start in September, so this is still a growing process. I'm still learning about different design stages and terms and things like that. So for me, it's a lot of just learning.
In a way, what you guys are learning is that no matter the field, you're learning project management. And I mean, I don't know if you know anything about the technology industry, but the highest paying job in all of technology is the project management job. You're learning a lot of very important things that somebody from a liberal arts background or a design background or an engineering background can bring. So I think what you're learning is such an important life skill that it's going to be measurable. So one question we had, I think it came in from Twitter, was what has been the role of your teachers in the process?
In this process?
Yeah, in the student, what do the faculty do? How do they help you in the student experience?
A very recent experience I had was actually by the time I joined my project with SXD, I actually took a course that same summer, which was VR in education. So first thing I did, first day of class, I went to my prof and I said, guess what? I just got myself involved in something, and we have to create something, and I just want to get to know, what do you think about it? What do you think about this project, and how have you experienced VR in the classroom? And he was very happy to give me interviews, talk to me about what I should expect. And something that I had no idea about before was how in instructional design, there are particular strategies that are used to achieve certain learning goals. And he was very, very useful, and still is, in the project progression for me.
About the Meaningful Life project, because this is a Meaningful Life project for all of you. But what does it mean to kind of put yourself out there and be open and have all this work out there on display for others to see and know that you're building on a work that other students have done and other students will do after you? So how has working open kind of changed your views on that?
So you're You're cutting out a little bit.
I'll type it as well.
Okay.
How did working openly kind of change your view of how learning and design works? Or how open were your projects? Are these not that open?
I think, so I was in a design program before, and actually it was a pretty similar working style, but it was a change from what I was doing before for sure. I was in law before going to design. So that was a very individual track. I mean, you have clients, but you're writing decisions on your own, you're drafting documents on your own. I was sitting in a cubicle most of the time. So going from that to a very open and collaborative environment, it was a big shift. It was definitely very valuable, but at the same time, there were a lot of conflicts because there are different working styles, there are different values going on, there are different worldviews. And so a big part of the learning was learning to get through those conflicts. And I think that's where some of the relationship management skills come in, those soft skills come in. And those are really valuable things that you can only learn through experience. And I do really appreciate that opportunity. And also just to learn from all my peers, like it's so multidisciplinary. From my program as well with SXD, it's we all bring different skills to the table. And for example, like at the beginning of the project, we had a open discussion about like what are the things that we love, what are the things that we think we're good at, what are the things that we think we are not so good at and we want to improve on. And we took those things to heart, and just whenever we're splitting tasks, for example, we try to incorporate those things so that we are bringing our strengths as well as improving on our weaknesses in our group work.
Oh, no, that's awesome. So I think that's about a half hour, so we're pretty much out of time for the session. I want to thank you for joining us and thank the Virtually Connecting team for organizing this event. Are there any last closing questions from our panelists before we go? All right, so I want to leave you guys then with just one last question. What could universities do to bring a similar program? Like, how can we use this learning, your advice, to empower students at other campuses? What would be the first step a university should do? Because they couldn't roll this out tomorrow. So what would be the very first step you think from a student that a university could take to get on this pathway? And that will be our kind of our closing thought.
I think something that's very important that could be probably the foundation for whatever other projects may come is if institutions would get students to share their experiences in a way that when they're designing processes or they're designing systems of teaching, that the students are there as well. They are part of this process. And that would be the foundation for any other implementations of different projects in the future. If students are at the table when these processes and systems are set in place, it would be a lot more flexible, and I believe it would yield better success.
I think starting tomorrow at any school, I wouldn't necessarily say to roll out design in every single discipline or the SXD lab in the classroom, but just touching on things that I said earlier today at TESS, I think improving student engagement by making students feel something, provoke emotion and hold opinions and support those opinions, and really ask a lot, have students ask questions, and foster an environment where they can explore those questions and discuss together will create engaging learning experiences and make a world of a difference in a traditional classroom setting.
Mm-hmm. And in line with that, I think just bringing creativity into the classroom, bringing in those prompts and getting students outside of their shell, outside of a specific mindset, I think that's a really good start.
Yeah. I would just say just like talking with students, honestly, like the bare minimum, because
and that doesn't happen that often on college campuses.
Yeah, so like especially like with our research, it was very personal, of course. So our main insights would come directly from students. It wouldn't be mediated through an individual or like a faculty member or something like that. And not to say that's like a bad thing. It works sometimes, I guess. But if you want students to, you know, enjoy things that they're doing, maybe you should ask them what it is that they want to do. So.
That's awesome. So with that, I want to close out our discussion today. And if any of you want to introduce yourselves and tell us where you can find, if you want, you don't have to, if you have somewhere where you can find you online, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, preferably, or your own URL from the website you run, that's my bias. But if not, just remind everybody your names and if there's some place where we can find you online, or just your name. And we'll go the opposite direction this time.
So my name is Macy Sue, and you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I think my Twitter handle is at MacyMSSue, MacyMSSIU. So you can add me.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Ngo, and you can email me at to.karenNGO@gmail.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And the URL ends with TO Karen NGO. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Karen.
And hello again. My name is Elham Newman. That's ELHAMNUMAN. I'm on LinkedIn. But also, you can email our team if you have any like comments. It's just mentalhealth@sxdlab.ca. Yeah. And yeah, you can talk to us there.
Yeah. My name is Tomelo. Easiest way to contact me would be LinkedIn or Twitter. Twitter handle is Sword versus Spoon. The sword and the spoon are both capital S's. Yeah.
If you're on Twitter now, just send out a tweet to the TES18 hashtag so everybody can go and follow.
Yeah.
I will try to find you all on LinkedIn and share that with everybody in my network as well. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to come and take us offline, and I will let you know as soon as we are offline. Thank you, everybody from the Virtually Connected team. This is thank you to everybody at eCampus Ontario and everyone behind the technology-enabled seminar and showcase.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Everybody.